All right, I've got 9 o'clock on my phone. Let's go ahead and call the Delaware County Redevelopment Commission meeting to order. Today is January 9th, 2020. I'd like to welcome everyone. We are in a new room, and there is not a flag present to issue the pledge to the flag, so we're going to skip that today. I'm going to start with roll call first. James King.
Here.
Angie Moyer.
Here.
Bryce Conyers.
Here.
Carrie Wiggerly.
Present.
Eugene Whitehead.
Present.
Paul Garrison. Present. Thank you. Record notes all present. I'd like to open the floor for nominations or a motion for officers for the board for 2020.
I'll motion to keep the officers the same.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Angie to keep the officers the same. Second from Eugene. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. King, I'll turn the meeting over to you.
All right. Next, we have the approval of minutes for 12/17/19.
Motion to approve. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll move on to number 5 on the agenda, Delaware County Redevelopment Commission rules and procedures for the meetings. I know, Eugene, you had a couple of things that you'd like to have amended in it.
Yeah. In the last whereas paragraph, it says the commission now desires to adopt the standard policies. I would like for the commission to change that to formally instead of now. I believe we've always been running under them, we just haven't done it formally. And then another one is in second page under E. At the end of that entire paragraph, it says microphone provided. I think we should add the word if provided. Add the word if in there. That way, in case there doesn't have to be microphone or podium.
Does anybody else have anything?
Those minor things, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2020-01.
I'll
Second.
second the amendment.
With amendments, please.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. Anything else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I will make the change and get it to the president for his signature.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Morrison Road Trail on Sidewalk. Roger?
Yes, last month we provided you with a copy of the substantial certificate of completion as well as the final payment. I want to give you time for that that information to be reviewed. Open questions on that if you have any.
So I provided to the board the certificate of substantial completion, the first item under item number 6. And we just need a motion and a second to approve that if you're in agreement.
Move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion second. Further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
The other item was the change order. You have that in front of you there?
Yes, I did distribute that to all of the members with a descriptive email laying that out. So that's the final change order. Total amount on that, Roger, as you noted in our last meeting, was a decrease of $100,454.23.
Correct.
Just need a motion and a second to approve that as well.
Move to approve change order 6.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Have any further discussion from the board? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And lastly, we've got the task order in front of you. We provided an amendment to that from last meeting for the buyer of easements that we're going to have. That's Todd Taylor out of Bookton, Indiana. He did the work last time. That number's dropped from 3885 down to 31,800.
Move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion from the board? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Just for clarification, when a buyer goes in, if you have an opportunity to get easements donated, for example, Allstate or Delaware Bank might be able to willing to do that. There still is a lot of paperwork still involved by a buyer. The documents need first correct recording. So Thank you very much.
And Roger and I have had a discussion. We will be approaching Ball State regarding a donation of their parcels. Yes.
That it?
Thank you.
Next, we have the MIC trail project.
Can I interrupt? The
Yep.
reduction of the sidewalk trail plan, the last dot on there, that's provided to you in this document that you have. And as we discussed briefly at our last meeting, in order to keep the project within budget, within the remaining funds that remain from the bond issue,
Right.
a certain part of the project or the sidewalks would need to be reduced. Roger and I met, and we, along with the attorney for the commission, Joe Retz, our thought in talking was that the sidewalks on Briarwood, Everbrook, and Everett Road that are crosshatched out in red are some of the more expensive sidewalks to install. There is a ditch in that area that has to be crossed, and that would save significant money to eliminate those. We also thought that the greatest impact of sidewalks would be the areas that are not crosshatched out. That is along Clare Lane up to the old apple tree, the YMCA area, connecting those apartments. And then along Fox Ridge Lane would be a sidewalk. So people on Briarwood, Everbrook, and Everett could still get to the sidewalk on Fox Ridge and could still access all of the restaurants and the commercial properties. And then the impact of the sidewalk along the Galliard Road going to the east, all the way to Oakwood, in front of the Grove Apartments, and in front of Ball State Football Stadium. I think we've all been down to Galliard on game day and seen people walking from that, parking in that neighborhood and walking along the Galliard in the grass. So that would alleviate that. That takes us a little closer towards the Cardinal Greenway going that way.
Point of clarification, Brad, on
Yes, sir.
Everett, P18, is that crossed out or is that staying in project?
That is crossed out.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that would be eliminated. Good point. So this would get us within budget. Roger, I believe, are we in concurrence that?
We're still there. I think the key was getting pedestrians east of Tilson to Oakwood. That was the key.
You're sticking with the
Yeah.
main thoroughfares.
Yeah.
This is
By
good.
eliminating, we're pretty much the same cost we had before if we were going to eliminate east of Tilson. So we did really increase substantially.
And you noted on the buyer form, the cost to acquire the properties went from $38,000 to $31,000 because there are less properties. So it does immediately start to see savings to the commission. So this would be the proposed route. Pending your suggestions, revisions, changes, additions, we would just need a motion in a second to proceed with this alignment if you're okay with it.
I'll move to approve.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Thank you. Next item, item 7, the MIC Trail Grant has been withdrawn. We were hoping that the next level trail grants would have been announced by now, but they have not been announced, so item 7 is withdrawn.
Okay. Go to the Welling Avenue Safety Improvements Request. Patrick?
Good morning. My name is Patrick Wooden. I'm with American Structure Point. I'm a project manager for the development of the Wheeling Avenue intersection improvements, a pair of intersection improvements at Moore Avenue and at Carrington Boulevard. Do you have copies of the proposed plans? I've got handouts here if you do not.
I brought mine.
Patrick, I did not print copies of that.
Should be copies there if you're passing
No, I have these old statute here.
down. That's what we're doing with graphics, right? Most recent costs.
Share, is that what I share? We're good. Thank you.
Brad, I asked Patrick
That's the
to
same
come
as
and
here.
give us an update,
Well, that's the
just
same.
because the estimates have gone up quite a bit. the start of this project. So he's gonna highlight how those prices have fluctuated. And any additional funding that's outside of the approved resolution to fund the project.
So in looking at the two intersections, we're both looking at safety improvements at each location, but there's slightly different improvements at each location. At the Moore Avenue intersection, the Moore Road intersection, we're looking at a signal installation there. Our initial thought was we'd be able to put a string pole in and string all of the signal lights along a string over the intersection. Due to some utility issues there, we weren't able to make that happen, so what we're proposing is to do signal pole installations, and there'll be a cantilever arm that extends out over it. So instead of a pole and stringing between two poles, it's going to be a cantilever arm signal mounted installation at that location there. And then at the Carrington intersection, we are looking at pavement widening along the northbound direction there. And that's for purposes of installing a left turn lane in between the through movements, northbound and southbound. So the widening is kind of shown in a gray shade on the exhibit that I've handed out there. And that's where the through northbound travel lane would move. And then the existing pavement, which is kind of shown in a little bit of a lighter shade because that's the aerial map. The existing northbound lane would be converted via pavement markings to a left turn lane going into the subdivision intersection there. So the scope of the work for the projects are a little bit dissimilar in terms of the work that's necessary, a signal installation versus asphalt pavement installation widening at the two intersections. In the development of this project, we did put together 3 cost estimates. We put together a preliminary cost estimate in November of 2018, about 14 months ago. That cost estimate was on the order of $450,000, which I believe was consistent with where we were expected to be within the budget as prepared in the engineer's report prior to this plan development. We subsequently prepared what we thought to be a final cost estimate in February of 2019, so about 11 months ago. And the estimate actually went down. We showed the estimate to be reduced to $432,700. The primary reason for the decrease between the preliminary estimate and final estimate is we did include a contingency cost within that preliminary estimate of 20%, about $75,000, just for any unknowns, potential inflation that might occur between the development of those estimates, and then also the final refining. We don't do all the individual pay items of the smaller scale pay items at a preliminary estimate. We do try to identify all those pay items that are going to be necessary for that final estimate. And it turned out that the contingency was, we overestimated the contingency. We didn't have as many pay items unforeseen as what we thought for that final development. So our intent was to have this project under construction in 2019, and so that was the purpose of developing that final cost estimate about 11 months ago. Unfortunately, we did run into some utility delays. We have some utility relocations that are going to be necessary as part of this project involving AEP distribution. There are some overhead electric lines at both intersection locations, and they do require relocation in order for the work to proceed. AEP had some difficulties at the Moore Avenue intersection. They were in conflict with a transmission line that is overhead at that intersection, and they're actually unable to resolve their conflict until the transmission lines, which were not in conflict with the proposed work, were able to be resolved. The transmission company, also AEP in this case, had planned to do a betterment project. They're looking to replace their wood pole transmission lines with kind of a steel pole, and they are looking to raise their transmission lines. Their schedule for doing that work was too late in the 2019 season for the distribution electric company to be able to relocate their facilities so that the road construction work, the signal and road work could happen in the 2019 season. So that did cause a delay in the schedule. The other issue that we had is 2019 was a very busy construction season, and noticing the unit prices that came in on a number of projects, and especially a number of projects on the smaller scale, the relatively smaller scale that we're looking at on the Wheeling project here. There were a number of projects that were not able to bid last year on the state level and on the local level, and we believe that the primary reason for that is the volume standpoint. The contractors had enough work to go around that they consider some of these smaller scale jobs nice to have, not need to have. So we are now in process of putting bid documents together, and we have those now released for a bid, hopefully to be opened later this month. But we did do a revised cost estimate here at the end of December last month. And the revised estimate that I've distributed here today shows our estimate to be $536,700. So that is an increase from our previous estimate from February of 19 of $104,000. So that is a pretty substantial increase. The primary reason for that increase is higher unit prices on the various pay items that are through the estimate. I have done a review of that estimate. I do think there is some potential that some of these pay items may be high. As part of the AEP's relocation at the Wheeling Avenue intersection, they are doing clearing operations along the edge of the right-of-way in order to relocate their utility poles to the outside of the right-of-way. We have a cost estimate in here for clearing right-of-way of, I believe, $36,000 thereabouts. That may be a high number because the work that needed to be done may not be there because AEP may have already come in and done some of that work. Likewise, we expect that we will be able to maintain traffic on the existing roadway. We'll have a slight shift of the travel lanes, and they'll put drums up alongside the edge of the construction. But essentially, there should be very minimal work in terms of maintaining traffic. They'll shift traffic over, and then they'll be able to get work done at Carrington. Work at Moore should be such where it's a very quick operation to actually install the signal, and there'll be temporary delays as that signal work happens, but it should be a very short-term duration. So it's possible that my traffic costs here for maintaining traffic are elevated. At the same time, I don't want to be the low bidder here. It's the contractor's job to sharpen their pencils and try to find the lowest cost. I'm trying to develop a typical cost for you, and I want you to be prepared that the cost estimates that we had previously put together may not reflect where we stand right here in 2020. So with that, I will note that we're looking to have the construction occurring early here in the spring of 2020. As I said, we're looking to put the bids out and try to get the bids here by the end of this month. We're hopeful to start construction at the beginning of the construction season, late March, early April, and we're trying to be complete before Memorial Day this year. And our hope is that by getting this relatively smaller scale project done earlier in the season, that we'll have fairly competitive bids on the project. There'll be people who are interested in getting that work because they can fill up their calendar by getting this done and still have time on the back end in the main summer months for bigger projects. So to that end, I will note that we have, as of last night, on the plan holding website, 3 general contractors have procured plans for this project. So we are hopeful that there's a fair amount of interest in doing the work, and we're hopeful that that will result in competitive bids. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you would have.
Is AEP out of the way now? I mean, have they completed what they need to do for this procedure?
The transmission company started their work at the end of October, 1st of November. The distribution company was intended to piggyback on them in late November. Our understanding from coordination with them is that they were supposed to be done here in mid-January. In the contract documents, we said that they would be done by the end of January to have a little bit of flexibility, but we're still directing our contractor that he shouldn't anticipate proceeding until April to have a little bit of a buffer there. But AEP has been in the area and they are actively moving their facilities. I do not know if they are complete though. There is a Comcast facility that's an underbuild on those electric lines, and Comcast will have to relocate to those new poles once they are relocated. So there's a little bit of time beyond that as well.
Patrick, thank you. You explained it very well. Kind of the things we ran up against because we did try to bid this last year. Commissioners will be opening the bids at the 21st meeting, which we'll take under advisement, hopefully be able to award. If I'm hoping the estimates will come in less than what we're predicting, but based on this, I may need some additional funding. I don't know if there's eligible funds in that TIF district that need to be But based on this latest estimate, I'm looking at another 150,000.
Okay. There are additional funds available for the project. I'd yield to John. Brooke, would the commission then wait for the bids to be opened and then the commissioners pass because we don't know the total amount?
I would wait till the bids are open to see if it really needs it.
At the next
Okay.
meeting, we can,
Right.
So we might have to table
You're
awarding.
gonna take the bids under advisement anyway.
yeah,
Yeah, but we won't be able to award it that first meeting in February then, because of our next redevelopment commission meeting,
It's
following our first commissioner meeting.
yes, correct.
You're just talking about a 2-week delay.
Do you think that would be an issue, Patrick?
I don't foresee it as an issue at this time.
We'll update you at the next meeting.
That's
Hopefully
good.
we get some good prices. Thank you, Patrick.
next we have the Park One Rail Spur Access construction update. Brad?
Yes. I gave all of you this document right here showing the alignment of the road to the rail spur. I believe you're all aware that the county acquired an easement along the south side of Bernini to the spur, and then the new alignment travels along the side of the spur on county property for loading and unloading of trucks. This is the alignment that was created by CHA. This has been issued for bids, this project. This started out as a county commissioner project, and so the county commissioners will receive bids at their next meeting. We'll open those. I just wanted to brief the board on this. If the county commissioners deem those bids appropriate, they may forward those bids to this board for our February meeting for consideration. So there may be a request from the county commissioners to fund the installation of this roadway to the spur at the February meeting if they're happy with the bids that they open. There are limited funds in Park One. There is some existing funding that was from the Bravini clawback money from them not meeting their obligations, and those funds still remain in an account, a TIF account at Park One. And so those monies could be used for this. Depending on where the bids come in, we'll have to gauge then if there are sufficient monies to make that happen. This is just a gravel alignment. This is not a paved roadway. However, there are some significant drainage issues. You can see the elevation lines, and they're pretty tight. There's a lot of elevation in this area here. So there's a significant drainage plan that goes along with this that has to be installed as well. We anticipate that to run the cost up a little bit higher on this. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer, but this is more just an update, keeping you guys in the loop as anything. That's all I got.
There are any. We'll go ahead and do the invoices before we have, because I know Andy has to leave and I might have to go at 10 o'clock also. So I'd entertain a motion to do all the invoices.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? We do not have any bonds, so it's all yours, Matt.
All right, well, thanks, everyone. Glad it was a sunny day today. We were supposed to be here last month, but the snow conspired against us. We're going to try to keep things pretty brief because we know that you all have time constraints. So we'll be as brief as possible with this material. And actually, Lauren is going to drive most of it. I'm just going to chime in the spots. So we all, as always, appreciate the opportunity to be here. And if there are any questions following this, you guys know how to find us. We're happy to look at anything that you might need from us. Brad and we all speak pretty frequently. So we try to stay plugged in, but if there's anything you need to see updated or brought into this, please let us know. I'll note a couple things off the top. All of the TIF distribution information that's in here is just the spring distributions. We just yesterday got the fall distribution information from Donna. So we're looking into that. If we notice anything after reviewing those, we'll bring that to Brad's attention so we can share that with you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lauren.
Yeah, so the first page you can just see, or the second page, I guess. Matt and I are your big utility team, as you mentioned. Jumping into the first area, the Morrison Road area. It was established in 1994. It's a legacy area, so it ends at the maturity of the 2015 bonds in 2040. The area was also expanded in 2018 to create Morrison Road Allocation Area number 2. And we'll talk about that area in a few slides. There's one bond outstanding payable from this area's TIF revenues, the 2015 bonds that I mentioned. There's about $4.5 million left outstanding on those bonds. And they're callable at any time if they mature in 2040, as I mentioned.
And as Lauren mentioned, one thing to keep in mind with that, as you're tempted maybe to pay these off early, that this area does go away when these bonds, the later of when these bonds mature, or 2025. So if you want to keep collecting, it's going to be in your interest to leave these bonds outstanding.
And then one other obligation as a backup, this area has been pledged to the 2012 taxable Bernini bonds. So if Bernini is short, this area can jump in and help pay the Bernini bonds as well. So jumping to the next slide, in order to save some time, I won't go into detail on all the numbers of the collections between 19 and 20. But in 2020, you can see debt service is estimated will be about $550,000, leaving you about $620,000 remaining for other projects. In this area, since it is a legacy area, you're allowed to capture homestead AV, incremental AV from homestead properties, but the commission has elected not to do so and to pass that through instead. So you can see in 19, your incremental AV was a total of $100 million. You captured $79 million and passed through about $21 million, which means you forwent $510,000 that you would instead pass through your overlapping districts. And we can discuss the impact of that in a few slides. One of the requirements of the annual meeting that you're supposed to have with the overlapping units is to talk about your future projects. So we worked with Brad to get a list of proposed projects you have. So here's just a general list for Morrison Road. You can see a trail project and the land incentive to maybe incentivize some new companies. The next slide would be try to illustrate the impact on the estimated impact, the overlapping units slide, of what would happen if you didn't pass through that homestead AV, that $21 million I showed on a few slides before. If you didn't pass that through, the overlapping units would have less AV available to them. So most of the funds that overlapping units have are at the maximum levy, so a change in AV can only change the tax rate, it can't change the levy. So a decrease in AV, since you're not passing that through anymore, if you made that decision to not pass it through, would in turn increase their tax rate because the decrease in AV would increase their rate. So we looked at what would happen if you took $21 million away from their AV. And so you can see, for example, in Hamilton Township, the tax rate currently is $2.37. If you took away that $20 million of AV, it would jump up to $2.39. So there's a little bit of a difference there. You are providing some assistance to the overlapping units. There are a few funds that would be impacted that aren't at the maximum levy, meaning if the AV changes, the levy can change alongside of it. So if AV declines, then the levy would decline as well. So these funds are the Hamilton Township Cumulative Fire, the Muncie Cumulative Building, and the Delaware Airport Cumulative Building Fund. So you can see there's not like a huge difference, but for example, the cumulative fire would go down by about $400 on the levy. Are there any questions on that? It's a little... All right. The next slide just shows a graphic for your coverage on the TIF bonds. So you can see your debt service in the bars at the bottom along with your coverage of TIF, and then that amount you pass through at the top in the dark blue. So there is a decent amount of coverage on those bonds that's available for you.
This is our strongest TIF area
I see that.
by far in the county, so yeah.
So the next we have Morrison Road Allocation Area number 2. This one was just created a couple years ago. You can see we're not expecting any tax increment yet. There hasn't been any growth in this area. So as soon as growth starts occurring, we can start collecting tax increment.
This is the area that runs west from the existing Morrison Road towards the Nebo Road TIF district.
All right, next we move into Nebo Road. So originally established in 2002, but it was divided out in 2012, and then also expanded in 2018 to create number 3. So we have sections for each of these 3 areas. Area number 1 has 1 series of bonds outstanding. The 2012 bonds is about $2.1 million outstanding in this area. It's payable from TIF, but TIF is short. If the TIF is short, the company makes any shortfall payments. To the next slide, you can see the TIF estimates for 19. We collected almost exactly half in the spring. And for 2020, following the debt service payment, we're estimating to be a shortfall of about $35,000, but that's payable from company payments or so there's no tax levy. Again, we illustrated a graph for you so you can see the estimated TIF projected against the debt service. So you can see there's a shortfall, but that's responsible. The company's responsible for that. Allocation area number 2. Same establishment dates we already went through. And this area doesn't have any bonds outstanding, so the revenues in this area are available for other projects. You can see you collected almost exactly half in the spring. We're estimating 2020 to be about the same in revenues. The next slide shows your projects in this area. Includes some of the similar ones you had in Morrison Road, but also maybe assisting with the roundabout at the intersection of Nubo Road and River Road, potentially helping with some Yorktown development opportunities, assisting with a couple bridges, the Nubo Bridge and the Yorkburg Bridge. And finally, the number 3 area, again, same establishment dates. This one was established in 2018. Similar to Morrison Road, number 2, there's no growth in this area yet, so there's no TIF revenues estimated.
This number 3 area is the Nebo Road area that then goes again further west towards 600, towards County Road 600, toward the Gill Brothers property.
Okay, for Park Save Lot and Park 1, the original area was created in 2000, expanded in 2008, and then it was amended in 2010 to split it off into various areas. This area has 1 series of bonds outstanding, the Series 2000 bonds, which mature in a couple weeks in February 2020. So after February, these bonds will no longer be outstanding, and all this area's revenues will be available. But it's pledged as a subordinate TIF pledge to Bravini bonds, so it's going to be used to pay the Bravini bonds once it becomes available. In 2019, you can see that you collected about half in the spring, and then in 2020, we're estimating to collect about the same amount of revenues. That would, again, be available for the Bravini bonds. So future projects, if there is TIF remaining road paving projects in a loading area for rail spur. The next area is Park Tucson and New Tucson area. Similar original creation date, and then these split off in 2010. New Tucson expires at the end of the 2010 bonds, and then Park Tucson expires in 2030. This area has 1 series of bonds outstanding, the 2014 bonds. They're outstanding amount of about $3.5 million. They're payable from this area's TIF revenues. If there's any shortfall, then from loan payments from year 6. Makes any shortfall payments. They mature in 2034. Similar to some of the other areas, we collected about half in the spring. In 2020, we're estimating TIF revenues to be about the same. Following your debt service payments, we're projecting a shortfall of about $19,000, which will be payable from any funds available in the bond fund or payments from the company. So a similar graph to what we've shown before in some of the other areas. You can see our estimated TIF estimate in the light green box, and then the bar graph showing the debt service payments. And again, there's a small shortfall you can see at the top, but that's the company. The new Bravini and Park Bravini areas, again, they split off from the Park 1 area in 2010. The new Bravini area expires 25 years from the date of the 2012 bonds, and then the Park Bravini expires in 2030, similar to the last area. These 2 areas have 2 bonds outstanding that have a little bit more complicated payment stream. The taxable 2012 bonds have about $1.9 million outstanding. They're payable first from Bravini TIF, and then they have a junior pledge of any Park 1 TIF revenues that are remaining, so those will be available to pay those as well. These bonds are subject to repricing of an interest rate in 2023. The other bonds we have outstanding are the Redevelopment District Bond of 2012. We have about $2.5 million remaining. These are payable from any leftover Bravini funds, also Park 1 fund, Park 1. TIF funds, and then the final source is a SBT, special benefits tax. However, other legally available revenues can be used, like Morrison Road, I think, has a junior pledge to these bonds, and any revenues available to the commission can be used to pay the shortfall.
And one thing to point out with these Bravini bonds, and this is something that Brad and I talk about whenever a prospect is looking at that site, is that because the pledges are set up the way they are for these bonds and the performance of the area hasn't been what had been expected, it hamstrings your ability to utilize that TIF to benefit any future developments, because you need every dime you can get to pay these bonds. So that's, when projects approach, Brad and I are always having conversations about trying to get creative to meet the needs of companies. So just wanted to kind of share that, to the extent that you can get someone in there and paying property taxes that generates a little bit more, that's going to increase your flexibility, not just with Bravini, but then with the Part 1 as well, because those Part 1 revenues and the Park Save Lot are obligated to the Bravini bonds as well. So it's just another, there's a variety of reasons to want to fill that building, but that's another one, is to give you some more financial flexibility out there.
There's less incentive available when there's a prospect for the Bravini building, is basically what it comes down to. So it's sometimes cannot be as attractive as other buildings that would have bigger bonding capacity or availability for tax abatement if it was a new construction.
So the next slide shows the amount of TIF we estimated and that you collected in the spring, as well as the 2020 estimate, which is about the same as 2019. The charts over to the side, I feel like those are helpful in showing how the money flows. So first you pay the Bravini taxable 2012 bonds with the Bravini TIF, which gives you about $85,000 remaining to pay the redevelopment district bonds. So then there's a shortfall of about $220,000 that has to be made up with other funds. And we've listed some of those other funds available at the bottom, such as funds available in the Bravini account, the Park 1 surplus, or Junior Morrison Road TIF. And then you can see in the graph on the next slide, we've listed the Bravini TIF in green and the Junior Park 1 in teal. There is a spike in 2020 that goes down. I just want to point out that's equipment that we're assuming doesn't continue in the Bravini building. And then you can see both debt service payments as well. So there's just a small shortfall each year. Or I guess it covers it. Next is the I-69 area, established in 2008, it expires 30 years later in 2038. There's no bonds outstanding in this area. You just collect a small amount of TIF, about $7,000 each year. Some proposed projects that you've identified are road paving projects, improvements to the State Road 332 entrance, and then you recently funded a traffic study. Next, we have the Magna allocation area. It was established in 2004 and it expires in 2034. There's no bonds outstanding, but the commission's obligated to pay up to $400,000 in interest on the Shell building. And that began in 2014, so you're over halfway through the application. 2019, you can see you collected about half in 2019 the TIF revenues. In 2020, we're estimating the TIF to jump up a little bit. That's due to an $8 million increase in your personal property in that area, and also a real abatement of building health. So that causes that increase. You also have Delphi revenues from the Delphi Creek revenues being generated as well. This does expire on June 30, 2020. So this area, the Creek area, is coming to an end. It reaches its 15-year limit this year. So the last payable year is 2021. And then recently, the commission pledged TIF revenues to the jail project, the county's jail project, of up to $3.5 million payable from this area, Industrial Center, and PRL. So in May, you contributed about $2.6 million to the capitalized interest fund for the bonds. Of that 2.6, about 1.7 came from this area. And that was divvied up based on the current balances of the accounts. So then the remaining balance of that, about $900,000, will be due at the construction completion.
And that was set up to be last money in. So to the extent that there are any savings during the construction of the jail project, the county redevelopment commission can see the benefit of not having to pay out as much TIF to that.
So the next slide, you can see some of the projects that have been identified from this area's revenues. cash funding the trail sidewalk improvement projects, the Muncie Industrial Center Trail project. There may be a company interested in the CR3 tire site, so maybe providing them assistance in cleanup of the site, and also gateway improvements and better signage, and assisting with Project I are some of the ones that have been identified. Industrial Center, established in 2008, so it matures in 2038. No bonds outstanding, but again, you have the jail commitment from this area. $205,000 was paid from this area this year in May to fund that capitalized interest account. At the bottom, you can see the 2019 TIF, and we collected a little over half in 2019 for the spring, and in 2020, estimated to jump by about $20,000. That's due to an abatement rolling off. And by 2022, we estimated that to be about $157,000. Projects in this area mirror the projects in the Magna area, with the addition of some of the ones at the bottom, including Hoyt Avenue tree trimming, 26th Street paving, the Plated Studio cover letter, and Houston Road building. Some of the ones that Midwest Middle was established in 2010. It expires 25 years from the date that 2012 bonds were issued. If you remember, these were prepaid in February of this past year, so you no longer have balance outstanding in this area. So those revenues are available for future projects. You collected about half in the spring of 2019 of our estimate, and in 2020, the estimate's about $10,000 higher. So proposed projects have been West Meadow, those of some of the other areas as well. The PRL, similar to the last area, created in 2010 and expires 25 years from the date of the 2015 bonds. Those bonds have about $2 million outstanding. They're payable from PRL TIF and ABB Creed revenues, and they mature in 2030.
And you might recall that these were the bonds we looked at redeeming early last year, and Star put some pretty onerous requirements in terms of almost a make-whole provision, where, okay, you can pay it off early, but you still owe us all the interest that you would have paid us anyways. So it didn't make it economically feasible to call them at that time, but we'll keep our eyes on it. It might reach a point in time where you can still pay it off a little bit earlier.
And then this area was also pledged to the jail project. $700,000 was contributed from this area's allocation account for the capitalized interest fund. 2019, this area actually collected all of the TIF revenues in the spring, so you received all of that early. 2020, we're estimating the TIF just to be a little bit lower. After the payment of debt service, you have about $220,000 of TIF remaining, in addition to your accrued revenues you received in this area. Some projects we've identified, again, the trail project, 2 bridge projects at 23rd Street and Cowan Road, and then again, Project I. Next, you can see the chart we had similar at the beginning of the presentation. The red is the debt service payments, green is your TIF, and then the blue is your CREED revenues. So there is a lot of extra revenues that are available after your debt service payments. Moving to the Daleville area, it's another legacy area. It was established in 1994 and matures in 2040 at the maturity of the 2015 bonds. The area was expanded in 2017 as well. There's one series of bonds, the 2015 bonds, about $3.8 million of TIF, or debt service principal outstanding in the area, or for the bonds. It's payable only from Daleville TIF, and they're callable at any time. Also, in addition to these bonds, you have the $113,000 pledge to the regional wastewater district in these areas to use. You can see in 2019, you collected a little over half. In the spring, in 2020, we estimate TIF to be about the same, following the obligations, the bond payment and the wastewater pledge. You have about $376,000 remaining. We're also estimating TIF to grow to about $880,000 after the roll-off of the abatement that's currently in the area. There's a lot of projects planned in Daleville, the Daleville area, including brownfield cleanup, redevelopment west of I-69, redevelopment of projects downtown, acquiring properties and demolishing them for new incentives, for new investment, and also maybe collaborating with the Delaware Community School Corporation, as well as some other projects at the bottom. The next slide shows your coverage. Again, there's a lot of coverage here after the payment of the obligation and the bonds. Moving to the Ag Park area, it was established in 2006. It expires 30 years later. There's no bonds outstanding in this area. In 2019, you estimated you were about $14,000, collected about a little over half in the spring. And for 2020, the commission made a determination to pass through all the incremental assessed value in this area. So 2020, we're not estimating any TIF revenues to be collected.
And that preserves your flexibility that if something were to happen out there in the future, you didn't completely terminate the area, you just elected to pass through the value. So if something were to trigger out there, you can make the determination for 2021 this summer that you're going to capture it next year. So that gives you some flexibility there.
Next is the Belfort area, established in 2009. There's one series of bonds outstanding, the 2013 bonds. Only have about $265,000 outstanding. They're payable from Belfort TIF, and then if there is any shortfall, there's county made an edit pledge of up to $95,000. And they mature in 2023, so they're reaching the end of the bond term. Some proposed projects in this area include a new entrance at the Albany Industrial Park and potentially a town splash pad. The TIF estimate between 2019 and 2020, you can see is about the same. The debt service payment is $71,000, so there is a little bit of a shortfall. So you'd need about a $2,000 pledge from the header.
Or you do have cash on hand in that account that's sufficient to plug that gap, so you wouldn't necessarily need to use the edit.
And then you can see the last couple of years of those bonds remaining. We're estimating the TIF to be just about what the debt service payment is. So there may be a slight shortfall, but that should be available to fund that. And then the final area is the 6928 Gaston area. It was created in 2017. No bonds have been issued for this area, so it doesn't have an expiration date yet. No growth has occurred, so you still haven't collected any TIF revenues in this area. But once you start to generate revenues, some projects have been identified, including infrastructure for wastewater and stormwater, and providing assistance to businesses to attract some.
So I guess in conclusion, this gives you a snapshot of, as of December 2019, where you stand with all your TIF areas. It gives us the ability to react fairly quickly if something comes up from you guys, where you need a quick analysis of, whether or not a project can be funded, if a new development's going to occur. We've got the models built that allows us to respond pretty quickly. Not every community does something like this. And we've always recommended it as a best practice, and we hope that you guys find it useful as a planning tool so you have something to refer to, whether if you just have questions yourselves or if you get questions from people in the community of, what are you guys exactly doing with all this TIF? You can point to this and say, well, we know what's going on with our TIF areas, and not every city, town, or county around the state can say that. So we're happy to help you with that.
Does anybody have any questions?
I do.
So when you get done with that, I need to talk about this new Delaware Redevelopment Commission. I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah, we can work through that with you and make sure that.
Because they've not contacted me asking where the money's at. I didn't even know the commission was established, and Cheryl didn't establish it when we set up those new T numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So in my abstract and everything, that doesn't even exist. So now I'm worried about it.
Yeah, we'll work with you on that.
I mean, what, does Cheryl have got the paperwork to say there's a new Delaware Redevelopment Commission?
Yeah, well, if she knew to set up the those new allocation areas because they're set up in the system, we'll just need to go back because I remember when I think it was Joe filed all the paperwork related to the establishment of those areas, and I would assume that included the establishment of the commission. So we'll just go back and look at that, and since this was not 2019 was the first year that generated any money, we'll review all of that. Like I said, we just noticed it in your fall settlement, but we can help kind of sort all of that out with you and make sure it's set up. I don't think, because the way the abstract is set up, the way that you've certified and everything like that, it's not going to impact anything from a certified assessed values, tax rates, or
Right.
anything standpoint. But it's making sure everything gets to the right place. And I know that's
So I need to have Cheryl see if she's even got the paperwork
Yeah.
that did, in fact, establish that redevelopment commission.
Yeah, she should double check that, and then she can get with Joe and us to kind of work through all of that.
I'll check with Joe on that. I'm sure he sent it to the auditor's office, but I'll double check with him, okay?
Sure.
Yeah, it just worries me because Cheryl's usually on top of all this stuff and she didn't. Because on our T numbers, we have specific T numbers for specific redevelopment
Okay.
commissions, and this was just added to the county,
Sure.
so.
Okay, well, yeah, it might have been one of those things where the focus was so much on getting the area set up the right way, the other documents might have got lost in the shuffle. So, we can work with you, and Joe and John will work with you to get anything corrected that needs to be corrected.
Okay.
Lauren, I thought you did a really good job. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. So I kind of use this. I mean, I know all this. You get this once a year, but I use this a lot. So thank you for being supportive of me working with Matt and Lauren to do this work. When we first started doing redevelopment work, I thought this was an important document, sharing with the commissioners. This just lends to full transparency of what you do all year long. Since I've been working with the Redevelopment Commission since early 2000s, about 6 times have I had people come into my office and say, what are you doing with this or that? Or, what's going on with this money? And I've been able to pass them this type of document. And then usually I never hear any more from them. So it answers questions just immediately. So without this, sometimes there's a lot of explaining to do and wires get crossed. And so having their assistance to do this is fantastic. So
I just commented, very thorough, well done. I can't imagine a redevelopment commission operating without something like this. So when you tell me that it's uncommon, I can't imagine how do you understand what's going on without something like that. So anyway, thank you.
can I ask just a couple short questions?
Sure.
Okay. You mentioned the Delphi Creed final funds received will be in 2021.
That's what we're expecting.
Okay, what about the ADB Creed final?
That is, I know it's,
It's like 20.
yeah, we've got it in
It's a little
the
further out than
detail.
this. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because that one got a late start because nothing happened out there for several years.
Okay.
'Cause they were technically established at the same time, but PRL didn't come until several years after Magna. So I think Creed is 2030.
27, okay, very good, all right. I didn't know when those, I knew they, but there will be a payment in 2021 on the Delphi Creed.
Yes, that's our expectation.
That will be very helpful for the sidewalk project that's happening, because those are payable from the Creed. So the next one was the BioVision Ag Park. I understood there was the funding passed through, but on the sheet I got yesterday from Donna, it showed that there was still money captured, $42,849.
Is that another question I got for sure when I get back?
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah, well, you made the determination, the commission made the determination, 2019 passed through for 2020.
Okay,
So that's just passing through the assessed value, meaning you're not capturing the assessed value. The assessed value is part of the tax base for the overlapping taxing units.
okay,
That money that you've collected in 2019 and before, you can still spend as long as you're spending it on projects that are identified in the economic development plan for that area. You're just not gonna get any new revenue in 2020.
there is.
So you have a balance.
There
Yeah.
is $42,000 in that account that could be available. In the past, some of those funds have been used to pave some of the roads in the area, so that could be an
Well, that's what I
option.
was gonna say, because I know we've had some complaints from up around there about some of the roads.
Yes, yeah,
So we could use that to,
help out a lot.
Remind me, what's the location of the BioVision? Is that by Albany?
It's,
that's by Eden.
Oh, by
yeah,
Eden.
yeah,
Okay.
Towards Scheidler.
Scheidler
Okay.
area. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
So I wrote myself a note to, when I get back, to check with Cheryl to make sure that in 2020, we no longer collect any TIF money.
Not from BioVision, and when we reviewed the
And how
certificate of
does she know that? Was she given paperwork?
Yeah, you received that notification when the redevelopment commission made that finding, and when we reviewed the certificate of NAB, we made sure that it was reflected that it wasn't being captured, and that in the certificate of NAB, we didn't see it being captured, and when you prepare the abstract and send that to us, we'll double check it again to make sure it's not being captured.
At that and Bell Perch, but.
The Bell Perch is still being captured.
Oh, okay.
They're definitely captured.
The other one, I guess, is kind of a legal question, maybe for John and Matt, but the PRL capital account, which is account 4524, was originally established as bond proceeds to do the paving in and around the industrial center, when all of the roads were repaved. That project came in less than projected, and there are, I didn't realize it was this high of an amount, but I caught this yesterday, $283,676 remaining in bond funds. I think it'd be good for maybe legal to look at the original documents from the bond and see what those funds could be used for. Could we pave additional roads in that area with those remaining funds? That could be significant, because I know there are some interest from the township trustee wanting some.
Yeah, and I've talked to Bob on that.
Yeah.
John, something we might want to look at, some of the areas that he's talking about, like in the Breezewood edition, is where MSD had went in and put lines in. Wouldn't it be up to them to go in and repave this area? Where they
MSD, yes.
did the road work? Or can the commission repair the roads and then send the invoice or bill MSD for this? Because I'm have a meeting with the new mayor Monday, and I was going to ask him about that, since I believe the council is going to give him 2 more appointments to MSD. But, it seems they've got enough money out there. They should go out there and repave those roads that they destroyed instead of us.
There should be a notification sent to MSD first that they have an obligation to repave those and that needs to be done by X date. If it's not done, then the county can come in and do that. You can use these funds or some other funds to repay those, then bill MSD.
Yeah, because I believe we have a meeting with
Next week, 17, with Leonard Reese,
Yeah.
the township trustee. I have a question that kind of backs up that one. Areas of Muncie Sanitary District serves in the county, they've been maintaining their drainage systems. But sanitary is telling us that Breezewood, it wasn't required that they connect to their system, it was a choice. So they're not gonna maintain their drainage system. I don't know if that's something.
I don't know why they would think that. I mean, they hooked it up, so that's their obligation, their responsibility.
Yeah. So, I mean, cause that's another thing the trustee needs assistance on, is the drainage out there.
So we'll probably have to send MSD a letter.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll give you on that one. We'll fashion something to put them on notice that they need to get it done this spring.
Anybody have anything else? Anything from the public? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There we go.